Yo, it's time to subscribe to Paid to Be Famous. What are you doing?
Subscribe to Pay to Be Famous.
Subscribe to Paid to Be Famous. Like the video. Come on.
Hell
You know
yeah.
the drill.
Button.
And slap that like button.
Welcome back to another Destiny 2 build guide, everybody. For today, we're going to be talking about the Arc Warlock. Going to be going over a build that you guys can use in endgame content, like Master Lost Sectors, Raids, Grandmasters, all that good stuff. We're going to have a very high uptime on all of our abilities. We're going to be able to take advantage of other subclass elements like Strand, and we're going to be able to stop all three champions: Anti-Barrier, Overload, and Unstoppables, all with this one build. So Guardians, let's get into it. But before we do, if you guys are new here, need more Destiny 2 in your life, listen to Dado, subscribe to the channel, and let me know down in the comments what build guide do you guys want me to do next, whether it be a Hunter build, Titan build, what subclass. If you guys got a build that you think the community is sleeping on, let me know about it down in the comments, and if I decide to do a video on it, I will give you a shout out in the video. Now let's get into this. For this build, like I said, we are on the Arc Warlock, the Stormcaller. We're going to be taking the Healing Rift to help keep us alive in those more difficult activities. Going to be using Burst Glide. And for the melee, I suggest you guys use Chain Lightning. It's an extended range melee that jolts your target and chains lightning to nearby targets. And while you're amplified, it creates additional set of chains. In the gameplay, I was using Ball Lightning because I totally forgot that the Chain Lightning jolts and the Ball Lightning does not jolt. So don't be like me. Use the Chain Lightning. Jolting targets is much more beneficial. The reason why jolting is much more beneficial is because, as you see right here on the Overload champions, you can actually stun them by jolting them. So that is going to help take care of that champion for us. Then for our grenade, we are going to be taking the Flashbang Grenade, an explosive grenade that damages and blinds nearby targets. The reason I chose this grenade is because when you blind an unstoppable champion, you will actually stun them. So between our jolting and our blinding, we've got unstoppable and overload champions taken care of. Then for our first aspect, we have Electrostatic Mind. Defeating targets with arc abilities, defeating jolted or blinded targets create an ionic trace. And with this build, it is very easy to jolt and blind targets, so we are going to be creating a lot of ionic traces. Collecting an ionic trace makes you amplified. And for our second aspect, we got the Arc Soul. When we cast our Rift, we're going to create an Arc Soul that fires at targets in front of us, and this also works for our allies. They can come through our Rift and they can gain an Arc Soul, and our Rift is actually going to charge faster when we have allies nearby. And to top it all off, while we're amplified and we have the Arc Soul, it's going to be supercharged and gain increased fire rate. Guardians, do not underestimate the Arc Soul. It actually dishes out a lot of damage. Even in Grandmaster and Master Lost Sectors, you can defeat Guardians with your Arc Soul alone, so it is a very good aspect to have. For our fragments, we are taking Spark of Shock. Our Arc Grenades are going to jolt targets, once again ensuring that we can stun those Overload champions. And since we're using the Flashbang Grenade, it's kind of a 2-for-1. This is going to work on both champions. The blinding from the Flashbang will stun the Unstoppable. The jolt from this fragment is going to cause that blinding grenade to jolt enemies. Very good synergy between the grenade and this fragment. Then we have Spark of Discharge. Arc Weapon Final Blows have a chance to create an Ionic Trace. So we're now going to be creating Ionic Traces from our Arc Weapon. We're going to be creating Ionic Traces from our Arc Aspect Electrostatic Mind whenever we defeat a target that's jolted or blinded, which ties back into our grenade, which jolts and blinds at the same time. Then we have Spark of Beacons. While you're amplified, your Arc Special Weapon Final Blows create a blinding explosion. So we're pretty much going to be amplified at all times. So our Arc Weapon is going to be blinding pretty much at all times. And in endgame content, blinding an enemy is one of the most beneficial things that you can do because they literally cannot shoot back at you, and you can just pick off all the ads one by one, and it makes it much more easy to stay alive. Then last up, we have the Spark of Ions. Defeating a jolted target creates an Ionic Trace. So yet again, we have another way to create Ionic Traces. Now this fragment right here isn't absolutely necessary since we already are creating a ton of Ionic Traces. So if you wanted to switch it out with something like Spark of Resistance, this is another good option. While surrounded by combatants, you are more resistant to incoming damage. Spark of Resistance will help you even more with your survivability. I just thought for this build, I wanted to really lean into those Ionic Traces. But if you're having trouble staying alive, go ahead and swap out that last fragment for Spark of Resistance. For our exotic armor, we're taking the Fallen Sunstar. This helmet completely revolves around those Ionic Traces, which is why I was leaning into it so much with the fragments. Fallen Sunstar states that Ionic Traces you can create move faster and grant additional ability energy. Nearby allies also gain ability energy when you collect an Ionic Trace. and it states right here that you're going to gain 25% of your grenade energy, 25% of your melee energy, and 30% of your class ability energy when collecting an ionic trace. For the mods that I'm taking in, we've got a strand siphon and an arc siphon. We are going to be utilizing a strand weapon, mainly due to the fact of the artifact this season. We have these two artifact perks right here, Unraveling Orbs and Horde Shuttle. Unraveling Orbs states that picking up an orb grants strand weapons unraveling rounds, and Horde Shuttle states that damaging an unraveled target with a weapon occasionally spawns a threadling. These two perks in combination are very powerful this season, so I'm always trying to utilize a strand weapon. If you're not using a strand weapon in your loadout this season, you are literally just missing out on free DPS. Then on my helmet, I also have an Ashes to Assets mod. Gain bonus super energy on grenade kills, so when we get a kill with our blinding grenade, get a little bit more super back. For the gauntlets, I'm taking in a firepower mod, so our grenade final blows will create orbs for us. I've got a grenade kickstart mod on. Every time we throw our grenade, we're going to gain more grenade energy back, once again leaning into that blinding and jolting grenade. Then for the chest piece, we have a charged up mod, increases the maximum number of stacks of armor charge. The more armor charge we have, the more energy we're going to get back from grenade kickstart. Then for the chest piece, you can take whatever resistance mod you need for whatever activity you're running. On the boots, I'm taking in recuperation, replenishes health each time we pick up an orb, and we're taking better already. Your health begins to regenerate immediately after picking up an orb. And then we have elemental charge, collecting a fire sprite, ionic trace, or void breach. It's going to give us a chance to get some more armor charge. Then on our class item, we've got the reaper mod, so every time we cast our rift and get a kill, it's going to spawn an orb. I've got two bomber mods, once again leaning into that blinding jolting grenade that we have. Bomber reduces the grenade cooldown when using our class ability. So that does it for all the mods. For the weapons that I'm using a Michael's Reverence Adept. It is a strand sidearm. And like I said earlier on the artifact, we can gain unraveling rounds just by picking up an orb. So this is essentially buffing our strand weapon. And the Lost Sector in the background gameplay has anti-barrier champions, so we're going to stun them with this sidearm. And that is going to take care of all three champions. The sidearm is for the anti-barrier, the blinding grenade for the unstoppable, and the blinding grenade can also jolt the overload champions. And we should have a grenade up at all times, but if we do not, that's why we have our arc weapon of choice right here. I'm going to be using my Undercurrent Adept with Volt Shot on it, so every time we reload, the next shot is going to jolt targets, so we can stun overloads like this as well. And then of course we're using the Dragon's Breath because come on, it's like one of the best power weapons this season. And this weapon states that it inflicts Scorch. You get enough Scorch, you can actually ignite an enemy, and Solar Ignitions actually will stop unstoppable champions as well. And Guardians, that's pretty much going to do it for the build. All you really got to do is just spam your arc weapon. You're going to create that Ionic Trace. It's going to make you amplified. When you're amplified, you can jolt them. With your melee, it chains the lightning. Throw your grenade. It's going to blind enemies. It's going to jolt them and blind them. Cast your Rift. When you're amplified, it's going to shoot even faster. Rift is going to help you stay alive. As you can see, we already got our abilities back. Arc Soul just killed that guy, created an Ionic Trace. Going to pick up this orb. We're going to get unraveling rounds with our strand weapon. We can just spread the unraveling to everybody around. See right here, we unraveled this target right here. The boss, we're doing extra damage to him. Go up to him, jolt him. We can blind him. Chaos reach him. And he is done. So Guardians, that's going to do it for the build. Let me know what you think about this build down in the comments. And like I said earlier, if you guys got a build that you guys want me to try out, let me know about that down in the comments. And if I use your build in a video, I'll give you a shout out. Thank you guys so much for the support on the videos. I'll catch you guys around the channel. Peace.